Good afternoon, this is Ms. Parks, and today we're going to learn about solving rational equations. So we've been adding and subtracting rational expressions. Now we have equations. Equations are actually a little bit easier to do because you can get rid of the fractions fairly simply. So let's go ahead and go through that. The first type is if you have one fraction equal to another. So basically you have a proportion. When that happens, you can cross multiply to solve these equations. So we're going to multiply this times this, 9 times x plus 1, and we're going to multiply this times this and set those equal to each other. So then that's it. 9x plus 9, 12x plus 15. I'm going to subtract 9x. That makes that 3x. I'm going to subtract 15. That makes a negative 6. And then you get x equals negative 2. Now, let's say you don't like to do that part in your head, then please show the work for it. Okay, so if you want to do, you can even subtract 12x if you rather. If you do that, please draw a line underneath to show that there's some addition that's going to happen here, like you're going to add these two parts together. And if the x is on the right, leave it on the right. Now, you do have to check your answers. What happens here is that since we have fractions, we cannot use any numbers that make this 0. So the denominator of the original cannot equal 0. That's it. That's your only restriction. And so negative 2 doesn't make that 0, doesn't make that 0, so you're fine. Go ahead and try this one, pause the video and do the problem. And again, please keep your equal sign lined up where it is the entire problem. All right, you should have done this by now. So I'm going to cross multiply these two. (10) times x plus 2. And then these two. 2 times 3x plus 2. So that gives you 10x plus 20 equals 6x plus 4. I'm going to subtract the 6x over. That gives me 4x. I'm going to subtract the 20 over here. Okay, so that gives me negative 16, and then divide by 4. X equals negative 4. It doesn't make that 0. Negative 4 doesn't. Negative 4 doesn't make that denominator 0, so this is good to go. All right. I'm going to go ahead and skip example 2. And I would like you guys to solve 1, 2, and 3 here by pausing the video, doing all the problems, and go ahead and cross multiply and make sure that your answers make sense and don't make the denominator 0. All right, so cross multiply. 3 times x minus 7. Subtract 3x. And x equals negative 3, which is fine. Doesn't make that or that 0. Next, 5 times x plus 3. That gives me 5x plus 15, negative 4x plus 12. I'm going to add 4x to this side, subtract 15 from that side. Again, I'm going to add 4x. That gives me 9x. And subtract 15. A lot of people here will write 3 as their answer, or negative 3. You're dividing by 9. That's a negative 1/3. Now, let's say that you thought that you were supposed to divide by 3, and you got negative 3 as your answer. You wouldn't be able to use that answer anyway, because it makes this denominator 0. All right. This one, we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to have x times 2x plus 5, and then 1 times 11x plus 8. This is going to give me 2x squared plus 10x equals 11x plus 8. So that means that we're going to have to factor because we have an x squared. So I'm going to set this equation equal to 0, subtract 11x, subtract 8. So that gives me 2x squared minus 1x minus 8 equals 0. Now, we haven't done this for a little while, but we have to factor this. Move this down. And in order to factor this, because we don't have a 1 in the front, we can't divide everything by 2 because the middle term is not, then we have to figure out if we can factor this way by using the box method. So negative 16 to get negative 1, 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4. None of these are going to give you negative 1. That means it doesn't factor. That doesn't mean you can't answer it, but you cannot factor it. So when you can't factor it, you have to use the quadratic formula. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. All right, so this is a, negative 1 is b, and negative 8 is c. All right, here we go. So x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac, the whole thing over 2a. So in this step, the second step, just should have 3 numbers total. So this is going to be 1, and then this is 8 times 8 really, so plus 64. So that's 65. And there's nothing you can do there. So in this case, we can make that into a decimal, but there's going to be 2 decimal answers that we have to check. Okay, so we have to do 1 plus the square root of 65 over 4, and there's no perfect square and you can't simplify that. And then 1 minus the square root of 65 over 4. So if you do that, for the first one, you're going to get plus 1, and then make sure that you hit equals, and then you can divide by 4. So this gives you about 2.66. 2.266, I don't know if I said that right. And then for this one's going to be negative 1.766. So we have 2 answers for x. Neither of them, if you plug them in, make this equal to 0. Okay, and so that's basically it. All right. You're not going to have too many where you have to do that, but just so you know, anytime you have an x squared function, which is a quadratic, and you can't factor it, then it's an equation. First of all, it has to have an equal sign. If there's an equal sign and you can't solve it, then you have to use the quadratic formula. All right, so let's go ahead and go on to the next type of question. So for these, when you don't have a proportion, you can't cross multiply. So we're going to have to, we're going to do something called fraction bomb. Okay, and so fraction bomb means you're going to get rid of all the fractions. And then what you're going to do is you're going to find the LCD. And then number 2, you're going to multiply all terms, the numerator only, by all of the LCD. And what that's going to do is it's going to get rid of all your fractions. Okay? I'm going to make this bigger here. So the LCD, I would put it in this margin if I had a little bit more room. It's just basically 4 and x, so 4x. And now I'm going to multiply the top of every problem by 4x. So when you write these on your notes, you're going to have to give yourself room. So 4x there. I'm going to actually write 4x there and 4x there. It doesn't really matter as long as it's at the top and you're multiplying it by everything. After you do that, you're not going to multiply everything out. You're going to cancel every single denominator. So every denominator will cancel. If they don't, then you did something wrong. Okay, so we're going to cancel this denominator We're going to cancel that denominator, and we're going to cancel that one. Since we picked an LCD, every denominator will cancel. So now we have 3 terms. We still have 3 terms. The first term we have is 5 times 4. The second term we have is 7 times x. And then the third term we have is negative 4 times 9. That's it. This entire fraction or rational equation has now turned into something that has no fractions in it. And what we really did is we just multiplied both sides of the equal sign by 4x. That's what we did. Okay. All right, negative 20, subtract 20, I mean. And then x equals negative 8. Now you have to check your answers. We make sure that it doesn't make any of these equal to 0, the x, which it doesn't. Or as long as it doesn't make this equal to 0, you're fine. So x equals negative 8. Go ahead and try the next one. And then I'll put some extra steps. So step 3 would be cancel all denominators and multiply out the rest. And then solve. All right, for the second one, I'm going to go ahead and give you the LCD, and then you guys can go ahead and do it. The LCD is x and x minus 5. And you have to multiply everything times that. So I'm going to write it above x, x minus 5. I'm going to make this plus a negative 8, x and x minus 5. So if there's 3 terms, you're going to be using this 3 times. If there's 4 terms, 4 times. 5 terms, 5 times, so on and so forth. So finish it up, pause the video, and then come back and check your answers. All right, nothing cancels here. So the first term, I get x times x minus 5. The reason nothing cancels is because there's no denominator. Next, the x minus 5 will cancel. So I'm left with minus 8x for the second term. And for the last one, the x cancels. So I'm left with a 3 and an x minus 5. You need to make sure you can read your writing so that you know kind of everything that's left. So here, all 3 of these have to be multiplied together. And sometimes you're going to have to multiply like x times x minus 5 times x plus 4. And that's going to take you some extra time. Okay? Here, this is only left. And here, the 3 and the x minus 5 are left. Now let's multiply this out. X squared minus 5x minus 8x, 3x minus 15. So on this side, I have x squared minus 13x. Now I'm going to set this equal to 0. Subtract 3x. Add 15. All right, so that's going to give me x squared minus 16x plus 15 equals 0. This is going to actually be easy to factor because we can factor it in one step. That's a 1. So the numbers that multiply to 15 that add up to negative 16, negative 1 times negative 15. And again, you notice this equal sign stays in the same place the entire way through the problem. Okay, don't lose track of that. All right, we set these equal to 0, x is equal to 1, x is equal to 15, and as long as it doesn't make this or this negative, or excuse me, these cannot be 0. 1 doesn't make that 0, either one of those, and 15 doesn't make either one of those 0, so we have 2 answers for x. All right. So go ahead and try the next 2 problems, please. Actually, it wouldn't be bad practice. Go ahead and practice all of these. Go ahead and do all of them to the best of your ability. For this one, you have to make that x plus 1 x plus 1, x minus 1 before you start. Okay, so anyway, here we go. Do them all first. Please pause the video right now. So do all 5 of those, again, to the best of your ability, and then come back and check your answers. All right. So for this one, the LCD is 2x. So I'm going to multiply this by 2x. Cancel the denominators. So the x cancels, the 2 cancels, and the x cancels. What I'm left with here is a 2 and a 3. That's 6. What I'm left with in the second one is a 5 and an x. And what I'm left with in the third one is a negative 12 and a 2. So that's negative 24. And then that's it. So 5x equals negative 30. And that's your answer. The only thing you can't have is 0. Next one, we have x for the LCD and x minus 4. So I have to multiply this by x and x minus 4, x and x minus 4, and x and x minus 4. The first part, nothing cancels. So I get x times x minus 4. For the second one, the x minus 4 cancels. So you're left with this. And for the last one, the x cancels. So I have a 4 and an x minus 4. So x squared minus 4x minus 2x. 4x minus 16. This is x squared. If I combine those, minus 6x. Subtract 4x. Add 16. So that gives me x squared minus 10x plus 16 equals 0. I should factor x minus 2, x minus 8. So my answers, x equals 2, x equals 8. The two answers that you have are x equals 2, x equals 8, and they're fine as long as they don't make either one of those 0. So 0 would not be okay, 4 would not be okay, but these are both fine. All right. This one, the LCD is 5x. Cancel the denominators. So cancel an x, I'm left with a 5 and a 15. Cancel the 5, I'm left with a 4 and an x. And cancel the x, I'm left with a 5 and a 7. Subtract 75. 4x equals negative 40, x equals negative 10. And again, that's fine as long as x is not 0 in this case. For this one, the LCD, I'm going to write it up here, is 2x and x plus 1. Okay, so 2x, x plus 1. Let me zoom in on this so you guys can see what I'm doing. Same thing here, 2x, x plus 1. I'm going to make that plus a negative 5. 2x and x plus 1. I'm going to cancel all the denominators. So for the first one, I'm left with a 2x and a 3x. So that's 6x squared. For the second one, I can cancel out the 2x. So I'm left with a negative 5 and an x plus 1. And for the last one, I'm left with a 3, a 2, and an x plus 1. So that's a 6 and an x plus 1. So I have 6x squared minus 5x minus 5 equals 6x plus 6. Subtract 6x, subtract 6. So I'm going to have 6x squared minus 11x minus 11 equals 0. Now let's see what happens here. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to factor this. We would have to multiply these two together. Negative 66 to get negative 11. So 1 times 66, 2 times 33, 3 times 22. 4 does not go into that. 5 does not go into that. 6 times 11 gives us 5. 7 doesn't go and 8 doesn't go. There aren't any numbers. So in this case, we would have to use the quadratic formula. So negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do that here. Well, 3 numbers, so 11 plus or minus. And then this part right here is 121. And then that's going to be 24 times 11. So if you multiply anything by 11, you just, if this is 24, you separate them and then add it together. So this is going to be 264. So if I add those together, that's going to be 385. If you want, you can go ahead and just leave your answer like that. Or if you want to do 11 plus the square root of 385, because we would have to break down 385 and see if it reduced down. So let's go ahead and just leave that as a decimal. This is 5 times 77. It actually doesn't break down. So we could do 11 plus 385, and we could do 11 minus the square root of 385 over 12. So 0.718. Okay, so again, you can leave your answer like this. I went ahead and did all the work, and then putting them into your calculator as a decimal, you should be able to do it this way, and you should get these answers. All right, let's go ahead and try the next one. All right, so for this one, we're going to have to factor x squared minus 1, and I'm just going to get rid of it, okay? And so my LCD is x plus 1, x minus 1. So I'm going to multiply the top, again, of everything by x plus 1, x minus 1. Now, this is going to be a little bit harder. So this is going to cancel with this. And so I'm left with 4x plus 1 times x minus 1. Here, these are both going to cancel. So I'm going to have a 12. And here, nothing's going to cancel. So it's 3 times this. We already know what that multiplies to. It's x squared minus 1. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down. Here, I have to multiply this whole thing out. So that's going to be 4x squared minus 4x plus x minus 1, and then that's 3x squared minus 3. So 4x squared minus 3x minus 1, and on this side I have 3x squared plus 9. So if I subtract 3x squared, subtract 9, we get x squared minus 3x minus 10 is equal to 0. And thank God this one actually factors negative 10 to get negative 3. It's negative 5 times 2. And then we set it equal to 0. So x equals 5, x equals negative 2. And then I have to check to make sure it doesn't make either of the denominators 0. So at the beginning, these are my LCD. So the only answers that I can't have are negative 1, because it would make this one 0, and positive 1, because it would make that one 0. So these are your two answers here, 5 and negative 2. Okay, we're going to do 4 more problems. We're going to do example 4, and then we'll do the 2 monitoring progress problems underneath there, and that'll cover chapter 6. So let me go ahead. This one will cover kind of all of the steps. So first we have to factor the denominator. So this is going to be x plus 3, x minus 3. And then the LCD is also x plus 3, x minus 3. Okay. Now we're going to fraction bomb. So we're going to multiply everything in the problem, which we don't really have a lot of room, but by x plus 3 and x minus 3. So x plus 3, x minus 3, x plus 3, x minus 3. I'm going to distribute that minus. I'm actually going to put x minus 3 first here. All right. Then I'm going to go through and cancel every single denominator. Again, so if you have 3 terms, you're going to have 3 terms after you do this, but they're just not going to be fractions anymore. So this cancels. I'm left with a 6 and an x plus 3. The next one, that all of it cancels, so you have an 8x squared. And then the next one, the x plus 3 cancels, so I have a minus 4x times x minus 3. For the next part, we're going to multiply this out. 6x plus 18 equals 8x squared minus 4x squared plus 12x if you distribute there. We're going to set this equation equal to 0. Okay, so minus 6x. Actually, no, let me combine these first. So 6x plus 18, 8x squared minus 4x squared is 4x squared plus 12x. Now I can set it equal to 0. And I'm going to go ahead and go up this way. So that's going to be 0 on the left. On the right, I'm going to have 4x squared plus 6x minus 18. I can divide all of this by 2. So that will give me 2x squared plus 3x minus 9. And then I need to factor. You can use a quadratic formula if you want. We cannot factor this in one step. We have to factor it in more than one step. So the factors of negative 18, negative us 3 are negative 3 times 6. So we have to use the box method because we can't do it in one step. So negative 3x, positive 6x. All right. So now we need to make sure we put 2x squared here, negative 9 here, and then factor this. So we can take out an x, that leaves us a 2x minus 3. 2x times what gives me 6x? That would be a plus 3. So 0 equals 2x minus 3 times x plus 3. Next, I need to solve for x. So I set this equal to 0. So 2x equals 3, divide by 2. And here, x equals negative 3. So I have 2 answers. I have to make sure that they don't make either of the denominators 0. So let me go back and look to see what my denominators are. So I have plus 3 and minus 3 here. So here, negative 3 makes that 0, and here, positive 3 makes that 0. That means that I'm not allowed to use this answer because it makes the denominator 0. It actually makes this denominator 0, and you can't have that. It makes this one 0 as well. So therefore, we can't use a negative 3. So the only answer here is 3/2. Okay, so your turn. Go ahead and try this one and the next two for that matter. If you want to pause and then just check this one first and then do the other two, that's fine. Okay. All right, so you should have at least attempted this one, if not all 3 of them already. Okay, so here I'm going to factor this. Actually, I have to factor both of these. So x plus 3x minus 3. And then as soon as you factor, cross that out so you don't have an extra denominator. This one's going to be x minus 3x minus 3. And this one's just x plus 3. In this case, my LCD is x plus 3, x minus 3, x minus 3. The reason I have to have x minus 3 twice is because it occurs twice in this fraction. And if I don't write it twice, then I'll never be able to cancel the denominator, and we need to be able to cancel all of the denominators. So it's going to be a tight fit up here. So we have to multiply so all 3 of these by all 3 terms. So there's going to be 9 of these up here. X plus 3, x minus 3, x minus 3, x plus 3, x minus 3, x minus 3, and x plus 3, x minus 3, x minus 3. All right, so all 3 of these for all 3 terms. Now we're going to cancel the denominators, which is the fun part because it gets rid of everything or lots of things. So x plus 3, x minus 3. So here what's left is a 4x in the first term and an x minus 3. Next, we're going to cancel x minus 3. So now what we have left is those two. An x plus 3 times an x minus 1. And then the last one, we can cancel that out. So we're left with 2 and then x minus 3, which is actually equal to this. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in, x squared minus 6x plus 9, because that's what we did to factor that. All right, let's multiply all this out. So here, 4x squared minus 12x. Here, x times x times minus 1, 3 times x, and 3 times minus 1. And then we have 2x squared minus 12x plus 18. Now don't worry, everything's going to all go, we're only going to have an x squared, an x, and a number here, and then we're going to set it equal to 0. So this side, we'll leave this alone for right now. This side, we're going to combine the x squareds. So we have an x squared and a 2x squared, so we have 3x squared. And that's good because here we have 4x squared, which means we're only going to have 1x squared, so it'll be easy to factor. Then we have a minus x. I'm going to highlight these. A plus 3x and a minus 12x. So when we combine all those, we're going to get minus, this is positive 2x minus 12x, so that's minus 10x. And then we have a minus 3 and a plus 18, so that's plus 15. Now we're going to set this equation equal to 0, so we're going to move everything that way. So we're going to subtract 3x squared. We're going to add 10x. And then we're going to subtract 15. So that means that on this side we have 4x squared minus 3x squared, 12x, negative 12x plus 10x, and then nothing minus 15. On the right side, everything canceled. All right, so this should be easy to cancel. X minus 5, x plus 3. So my two answers are x equals 5 and x equals negative 3. Again, over here, you can't have a negative 3 because it makes this part 0. You can have a positive 3, but you definitely cannot have a negative 3. So your only answer here is 5. All right, let's do these last two. I'm going to factor this, x plus 2, x minus 2. Cross that off. That's your LCD. Let me highlight or zoom in on this. All right, so we're going to multiply everything by x plus 2, x minus 2. And you can see how it's easier if you leave a space above your problem so that you can write in the LCD. If you kind of put all your questions all together, you're not going to have any space to multiply that in. So cancel the x minus 2, I'm left with a 9 and an x plus 2. Cancel the x plus 2, and I'm left with the 6x and an x minus 2. And cancel both of these out, and I'm left with a 9x squared. 9x plus 18 plus 6x squared minus 12x equals 9x squared. So this side, 6x squared, and then 9x minus 12x. We're going to set this equal to 0. We need the x squared to be positive, so we're going to subtract everything over to this side. Add 3x, subtract 18. This side, I get 0. 3x squared plus 3x minus 18. Divide everything by 3. And then factor. And solve for x. X equals negative 3, x equals 2. And then last but not least, check to see if that's okay. So if you're looking at this, 2 would make this one 0, so we can't use it. So you can only use negative 3. Again, you can't make any of these 0. The 2 makes that 0 and that one 0. Last question. Again, hopefully you did this first. Factor this. LCD. multiply everything by all of that LCD. Yes, you have to do this step. You can't just put in what's missing, because then you can't cancel anything. So we have to cancel those out. Gives me 7 times x plus 1. Nothing cancels here. So 5 times this, and that is x squared minus 1, because that's what we factored it from. And then the last one, we just have a 6. So 7x plus 7 minus 5x squared plus 5. So negative 5x squared plus 7x, 7 plus 5 is plus 12. We're going to move everything, all of these, that way. So I'm going to add 5x squared. I'm going to subtract 7x. And I'm going to subtract 12. When I rewrite them, I'm going to put them in order. So this side's 0. I'm going to put the 5x squared first, minus 7x, and then 6 minus 12 is minus 6. We have to factor this. So factors of negative 30, they give us negative 7 in the middle. So 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10. So 3 times 10 is going to work. Let's use the box method. So we have the 5x squared is first. Then the middle number comes from these two. So plus 3x minus 10x, these two numbers. And then we have a minus 6. So when we factor this, you can take out an x. That leaves you with 5x plus 3. And then 5x times what gives you negative 10. That would be a minus 2. So x minus 2, 5x plus 3. And then the last thing is to set those equal to 0. So here x equals 2. 5x plus 3 equals 0. 5x equals negative 3. X equals negative 3/5. Now to check our answers. The only answers we can't have are negative 1, which would make that 0, and positive 1, which would make that 0. So in this case, both answers will work. So that covers it for section 6.5. I know that was a very long section, but that also covers it for all of chapter 6.